Well, joining us now is Tim Evans from Longleaf Trading Group. He's live in the CME in Chicago. Tim, great to have you on board with us today. Let's talk a little bit more about OPEC there. It's certainly watching the NYMEX oil price sort of pulling back from those two-year highs there. There does seem to be some doubts creeping in here about the extension perhaps at that meeting this week. Is that justified? Should we be worried that maybe we're not going to get as much as the market is expecting?
Nice to be with you today, Leanne. Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, the market seemed to have gotten, to such a point of being certain that, it was inevitable that a little doubt was going to creep in as we were approaching the OPEC meeting date here on November 30th. I think the pullback, the behavior of that pullback today kind of illustrates where the market is from a psychological standpoint, because we were down much heavier to begin the day. And we saw some good buying to bring it up off its lows. I mean, although we are still negative on the day on a net basis, I think the buying behavior shows that the market isn't completely freaked out. But concern nonetheless definitely does exist. There's a lot of concern with respect to Russia primarily, and there's a lot of reasons why that concern is there. So, again, I think the behavior today is expected, kind of given the importance and given how long the market was to begin the week.
Well, tell us a bit more about those concerns with respect to Russia, but it does seem like now, I guess the relationship between Russia and Saudi Arabia perhaps is not in parallel, or certainly not to what we used to see, that relationship. Tell us a bit more about those concerns.
Yeah, I mean, I really find this to be probably the most compelling aspect of the crude oil market right now, Leanne. I mean, we have to kind of go back and remember at the last OPEC meeting, there were images of the oil minister of Russia and the oil minister of Saudi Arabia riding around in a car together, showing up at the meetings together, holding joint press conferences, talking about their willingness and desire to visit each other's countries. They were best friends in that moment. But obviously, they were so close and they were so unified in that moment because their interests were very much aligned in that moment. Now that the crude oil market has responded and we're seeing higher crude oil prices, now we're seeing these much higher crude oil prices, especially if the market begins to get over $60 a barrel. It's going to have a different impact on the Russian economy and the Saudi Arabian economy. So their interests aren't necessarily in line here north of $60. So that really has the market concerned, that Russia will not be in support of that extension to the end of next year. There's a lot of speculation in terms of what they ultimately will be on board for. I've heard compromised ideas that, maybe 6 months beyond the March current deadline, which would extend it to September. Yeah, but no one's really sure. The one thing we do know, though, is that there is concern and there's not a unified idea on the Russian side yet whether, what ultimately they're going to be doing here at the meeting on Thursday. My assumption is, Leanne, is that they're ultimately going to get something done. The consequences, I think, are too great. But I think, it begins to illustrate that we can't really expect much cooperation beyond an extension of the current deal.
And what about if we don't get as much as what the market is expecting? Yes, we see a deal, but what if it's less than we're expecting? I mean, we know that the oil price has gained so much in anticipation of this mequeting. I think it's up almost 25% since the start of September. If we don't see it, do you think there's going to be a lot of volatility in the oil price and perhaps, quite a big pullback?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we hit the highest price level since August of 2015 last week. So the market got to those levels in anticipation and having a strong expectation that we are going to see a 9-month extension from OPEC and Russia here at the end of the week. And if we do not get that, we're going to see a nasty reversal in the market to the downside. I mean, again, the whole idea of finding global balance is predicated on OPEC continuing to be committed to this production cut agreement. And if that's not in place, that changes the dynamics of the market completely.
All right, Tim Evans, look, appreciate you joining us, and we'll look forward to talking to you next week because we'll have an outcome from that meeting. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.